social media platforms and websites. Simultaneous interpretation into all 6 OSCE languages is provided for this meeting. Kindly note that an advanced list of speakers for each agenda item has been duly received, and that in accordance with Rule 27, I, as chair, will determine the order in which our members will be called to speak. I kindly ask all speakers to limit their interventions to 2 minutes during the debate. Please pay attention to their timer, which will be visible on the screens, thereby enabling a sound exchange of ideas and timely conclusion of our meeting by 6 p.m. Without further delay, I will proceed with our agenda. The draft agenda of this meeting has been circulated. I understand that many of us may wish to address recent developments. I think that this can be done within the frame of our planned agenda. As we heard no objections, the agenda shall be considered adopted. Thank you. Dear colleagues, now I move on the item 2. It is the opening remarks of the chair of the committee, so me, and I will deliver my short, I would say, remarks to the distinguished members of our today's committee meeting. Dear colleagues, this week marks the 1-year anniversary since the beginning of the unprovoked, unjustified, and illegal war of aggression against Ukraine. Besides its dramatic military, political, and humanitarian repercussions, these war directly and severely undermined economic and environmental security across the globe. Since the very inception of the crisis, we have been trying to better understand its economic and environmental impact and consider possible countermeasures. Just recently, we were discussing these important issues in Warsaw during our last autumn meeting. Today's meeting will be no exception. Looking at our program soon, we will be hearing from Ms. Gudrun Kukler, who is our rapporteur of the committee. She will highlight her ideas for this year's report. We will also listen to Ambassador Florian Rauni, chairperson of the OSCE Economic and Environmental Committee, who will present his committee's priorities for 2023. Finally, Ambassador Igla Hassani, coordinator of OSCE Economic and Environmental Activities, will brief us about relevant plans of the OSCE executive structures. The 3 presentations will inform today's exchange on advancing a common OSCE approach in promoting economic and environmental security. The need for the coherence is indeed great these days. Subsequently, we will build on this exchange through a timely special debate on affordable, secure, clean, and sustainable energy in the OSCE region, prospects and challenges. To this end, we will welcome 3 special guests, Mr. Wei Huang, Director of the Division of Energy Planning, Information and Knowledge Management at the International Atomic Energy Agency, Mr. Stephen Konin, Professor at New York University's Tandon School of Engineering, and Mr. John Aldag, sponsor of the resolution on accelerating the green energy transition at the OSCE 29th annual session in Birmingham. Dear honorable guest speakers, I would like to thank all of you for your presence at today's committee meeting. We look forward to your insightful presentations, which I am confident will reiterate the importance of energy security these days, as well as shed light on what we as parliamentarians can do to promote cleaner, more resilient, affordable, and accessible energy. Dear colleagues, as we witness almost every day in our constituencies, economic and environmental security is increasingly important, and our citizens directly relate to it. The impact of the war in Ukraine must be considered in the wider context of ongoing efforts to rebound from a terrible pandemic which overstretched our supply chains, limited connectivity, and created energy bottlenecks, thus slowing growth and development in the world. Clearly, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has further deepened the energy crisis, leading to economic distress, social instability, and record inflation across the OECD. The so-called weaponization of energy has led most European governments to urgently reconsider and diversify their energy supplies to survive the winter and ensure greater resilience against future shocks. Furthermore, the war has demonstrated how weak and exposed our critical infrastructure is. Besides the systematic attacks on Ukrainian infrastructures, which left millions of citizens without heating, electricity, and water in the middle of winter, the sabotage of Nord Stream 1 and 2, and the repeated attacks on Ukrainian nuclear power plants bear consequences that stretch far beyond Ukraine. Finally, the conflict has seriously undermined food security, affecting billions of individuals worldwide. While I applaud the 4-month extension of the United Nations Turkey brokered grain deal between Russia and Ukraine in late November 2022, I urge all sides to work at a permanent solution to this serious problem. Against this complex background, promoting security and stability in the OECD area through sustainable economic recovery and sound environmental policies is a top priority. Mitigating the impact of climate change and environmental degradation on our security, health, and wealth is imperative. I am proud that the OECPA Second Committee is taking an active approach in linking economic recovery, green transition, and environmental protection considerations. Now, more than ever, we must lead by example. We have to urgently review our policies and upgrade our behaviors in order to ensure more fair, sustainable, and secure development across the OECD region. Among the many economic and environmental threats affecting our common security, last September, the Second Committee Bureau prioritized 3 issues for this year. First, socio-economic instability. Second, energy and food insecurity. And third one is climate change. I am very glad to note that these areas of work resonate with the priorities set by the North Macedonian OECD chairmanship for 2023. Now, looking ahead, we plan to remain engaged and add value by holding a timely international conference in Baku, Azerbaijan, on the role of parliaments in promoting security and stability through green economy, connectivity, and sustainable development in the OECD region on 22-23 May this year. Dear colleagues, you are all invited to the conference. The preliminary program, concept note, registration form, and practical information of the conference will be circulated in due course. Bringing a strong parliamentary perspective to the Mediterranean Commission on Sustainable Development, which will be held in Marseille, France on 14-16 June 2023. Developing, debating, and adopting forward-looking resolutions at our next annual session in Vancouver, fully synergizing our efforts with those of the OECD executive structures, including by contributing to relevant OECD events in the second dimension, such as Economic and Environmental Forum and the High-Level Conference on Climate Change. Dear colleagues, to conclude, I will do my utmost as the chair of the Second Committee to ensure that our Parliamentary Assembly becomes a privileged platform to first exchange relevant experience in addressing economic and environmental threats. Second, promote a greater understanding of the complex issues at stake, including through a stronger interface with science and technology. And third, develop innovative and well-informed policy guidance that can inspire our national efforts. Thank you for your attention. Dear colleagues, now I would like to move on the next item of our agenda. I will now give the floor to our rapporteur, Ms. Gudrun Kugler, who will share her views and ideas for the upcoming annual session in Vancouver. Dear Gudrun, thanks again for your active commitment in our affairs. You are a genuine positive force within the Assembly, and I am very proud to work with you. I am now keen to hear your thoughts about the key environmental and economic security challenges faced by our countries and citizens. Please, Gudrun, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your very kind words and for giving me the word. Dear colleagues, dear ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, a few weeks ago, I had the chance to talk to Russians, and we very quickly agreed in what we want, where we want to see us in the year 2050. We agreed that we want to see our countries in common prosperity. But unfortunately, instead, today we meet at the anniversary of a terrible war that constitutes a crisis for all of us. It constitutes a crisis for each and every woman, man, and child in Ukraine. Just imagine, these children were your own children. It constitutes also a crisis for each Russian who would rather be with his family and in his profession than dying on a battlefield. It constitutes a crisis for all people and countries in the OSCE region. We are all suffering from fear, from insecurities, from instabilities, from less cooperation, from inflation, and who knows what else is to come. This war is a particular crisis for OSCE and for the second committee, because this war is detrimental to economy, to environment, and to cooperation in the fields of technology and science. And, you know, my dear colleagues, the economy of the OSCE region should thrive. Our natural reserves, our industrial capacities, the technological level that we have could make all of us together prosperous and could make us a blessing for the entire world. Instead, we squander this potential. And the environment of the OSCE region should be protected. Instead, for generations, war activities poison lands and rivers. And the great Austrian Empress Maria Theresia, who actually reigned from this building, she said, and I quote her very briefly in German, she said, "Lieber ein mittelmäßiger Friede als ein glorreicher Krieg." She said, better a mediocre peace than a glorious war. This evening, you are all invited to a reception in the Austrian Parliament. And when you come in, you will see a beautiful entrance hall. And on the sides, you will see huge wall paintings. And the wall paintings are called the Blessings of Peace. Interesting, this is the entrance to a parliament. Now, when you walk in, you will see on your left side, that half of the painting that is called the Blessings of Peace with regard to economy. You see various depictions of how peace allows economy to thrive, how people can be creative, how they do business, how they work together in various forms, and how they create common prosperity. And then when you look on the right side, you will see the blessings of peace in arts. You will see various depictions of how people thrive when they share beauty together. And the same Empress, Maria Theresia, who worked in this very building, invited little Mozart to perform in this building. That is a blessing of peace. Now, as the rapporteur for the second committee, I am currently working intensely on my report and a draft resolution. I see my role only as the role of a moderator, bringing together all of our ideas, bringing together the thoughts of the special representatives, the coordinators, and the thoughts of all of you. So the role of myself this afternoon will be to listen to your suggestions, to be an active listener and to take careful notes. Parliamentarians are drivers in the seat for change. This is why in my report, I focus on so many issues. As you know, the second committee covers so many issues and it's becoming such an important committee, especially in the times of crisis. I focus on these issues in the lens of what they mean for parliamentarians, in the lens of what that could mean that you can bring to your own parliament. And I try to assess and conclude the best way of us finding solutions together. And as we all agree, we do need these solutions very urgently. Now, I focus in my report on a number of principles. In the field of economy, I give you examples. These principles are that security and cooperation need stable, resilient, and sustainable economies. That this, of course, means to achieve peace and prepare reconstruction. That we need to secure economic competitiveness of our countries. That we need to combat inflation. I also use as a principle that energy is the basis for economic growth and prosperity, and it needs to be affordable to all people. That is something that parliaments need to underline. I will mention the problem of demographic implosion as a destabilizing factor for economies that we need to look at. It requires analysis, response, and maybe adaptation. I will also talk about food security, as our chair has also mentioned as one key example. Now, corruption is another issue, and corruption is stealing twice. First, it is stealing from the people and disrespecting the ownership of the people. But secondly, it is also a form of stealing hope and demoralizing people and generations. With regard to the environment, here's a few of my principles. Protecting the environment is a global challenge. One region alone cannot achieve the goals. So we need a global approach. We also need a science-based approach. When protecting the environment is science-based, then energy transition can become a driver of economic growth. That's key. Also, when we look into cooperation, hazardous waste and radiation do not stop at borders. They do not show a passport. So it's an issue that we need to tackle together. We also need to look more into the health dangers of microplastic. We are not fully aware yet of what that entails, and we need to focus together on research and analysis to find out how to react to that root cause for sicknesses. We also do not want to foster climate anxiety, especially as members of parliaments. We do not want to scare people. We want them to look into a bright future and invest time and energy to improve the situation. And that entails to also speak about positive aspects, things we have already achieved, such as the reappearance of rare species that has happened in very large numbers, or the improvement of coral reefs. There are good news. Our efforts have already borne some fruit. We need to also talk about that. Now, with regard to science and technology, these are our key allies in achieving change. And employing science and technology, we will achieve green energy without jeopardizing progress in the area of economy. That is key. Through science and technology, we will achieve energy transition without harming economy. Another example, data is a great resource, and we do need to develop transparent common data strategies. We have not looked into this field sufficiently so far. Now, that's just a few highlights. Of course, there are many details for which we do not have time now. I would like to thank the OSCE PA Secretariat, led by Marco Bonabello, and the cooperation in the second committee. I would like to thank our chair, Asai Guliev, and our vice chair, Artur Gerasimov, who is unfortunately not here in the room today. And I would like to thank all of you for engaging in a common thinking process to find solutions to achieve security and cooperation in the fields of the second committee and to work together towards common prosperity. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kugler. I really appreciate your very, very interesting thoughts, and I do believe that we will get the ideas and the feedback from the audience, from the distinguished members. I also look forward to working together, Madam Kugler, on the path to Vancouver to the next annual session. I do hope that you will have very, very interesting, a very balanced and a very, let's say, prioritized draft, which will be adopted in our annual session. Thank you very much again, dear rapporteur. Dear colleagues, as you know, the winter meeting always provides a good opportunity for our members to interact with the governmental structures of the OSCE and dealing with economic and environmental security. Just before the meeting, we had a very good exchange with our ambassadors, Florian Raung and Ambassador Igor Hassani. We had an exchange of how we can really combine our common efforts in the best interest of our countries and our assembly in general and OSCE. And I'm very grateful that both of our distinguished ambassadors are available to address these committee meetings. So, as I mentioned before, that we really have a good, excellent cooperation and the coordination with the executive structures. And I think now it is the right time to listen to Ambassador Florian Raung, the chairperson of the OSCE Economic and Environmental Committee and permanent representatives of Austria to the OSCE. Welcome, Mr. Ambassador. Please, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Excellencies, distinguished parliamentarians. It is an honor to address you today and to give an outlook of the plans for the Economic and Environmental Committee in 2023. Let me thank the OSCE chairpersonship of North Macedonia for the confidence expressed by entrusting me and Austria with the role as committee chair for another year. I would also like to express my gratitude to the Polish chairmanship of 2022 for the great cooperation and valuable efforts undertaking the second dimension during an utmost challenging time for the entire organization. Ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow marks 1 year since the beginning of Russia's unprovoked aggression against Ukraine. Its devastating humanitarian, economic and environmental consequences are undeniable, far-reaching and tragically continue to unfold further day by day. It is therefore clear that Ukraine must remain at the core of our attention. In accordance with the chairpersonship of North Macedonia, we will address this most important security issue for the entire OSCE area in all our meetings. At the same time, the work plan for the Economic and Environmental Committee in 2023 focuses on some of the timeliest and most crucial areas within our thematic domain. Being a result of consultations with all delegations, this approach seeks to facilitate comprehensive discussions on key topics of common interest that act both complementary and reinforcing for the entire cycle of proposed second dimension events. With this, let me share an overview of the upcoming activities for this year. Our work already started with an initial Economic and Environmental Committee meeting in late January, which featured a presentation of the chairpersonship's priorities, as well as the draft work plan of the Office of the Coordinator of OSCE Economic Environmental Activities, Ambassador Hassani, sitting on my right. On 8th of March, we plan to direct our attention towards the topic of digitalization and its effects on human capital development, as well as the labor market. Following that, the committee will meet to discuss negative effects of environmental degradation and biodiversity loss, also in face of the glooming climate crisis. While keeping a general balance between economic and environmental topics, additional meetings will seek to address burning issues connected to water management, the role of trade and transport in strengthening food security, evaluating linkages between environment, corruption, and money laundering, as well as the protection of energy networks from natural and man-made disasters, with the aim to boost energy security and sustainability. Unfortunately, it is obvious that many of these topics have become even more relevant considering the vast environmental and critical infrastructure damages caused in Ukraine. To put our debates into a broader context, we intend to invite a wide range of speakers who can provide us with thought-provoking input, including from academia, other international organizations, NGOs, civil society, and the private sector, while trying to uphold the gender balance for the whole sum of committee meetings. Additionally, representatives from field operations and professionals involved in the OSCE project work will be given the opportunity to showcase the organization's invaluable impact on the ground. The Economic and Environmental Committee's thematic program for this year thereby reflects the chairpersonship's priorities with its human-centered approach at the core. Ultimately, we must not forget that this is the people's lives we seek to improve through our work. Mr. Chair, distinguished committee members, despite and in fact, due to the dire security situation we are currently facing, I am convinced that OSCE's second dimension holds great value to foster dialogue concentrated on the most pressing economic and environmental challenges for all of us. In this endeavor, I look forward to closely cooperate with the Parliamentary Assembly, which may provide differentiated views and proposals to address transnational threats, as well as credible solutions in trying to mitigate them. With this common objective in mind, I'm confident that we will find ways to increase existing synergies between our committees and broaden our cooperation further. Let me conclude by saying that my team and I stand ready to engage with you in a result-oriented manner that seeks to address common challenges while underlining our commitments to the economic and environmental dimension as an integral part of OSCE's comprehensive approach to security. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Rauning, for your informative presentation of the OSCE Economic and Environmental Committee for 2023. We look forward to continue our collaboration with you. I'd also hope that maybe in the coming future we can have some joint session together of our two committees. Thank you again for your time and for your availability. Dear colleagues, now I've moved on our next speaker. I would like to give the floor to Ambassador Igor Hassani, the coordinator of OSCE Economic and Environmental Activities. His office is mandated to support our states in implementing commitments in the economic and environmental dimension. Ambassador Hassani has also recently addressed our members during the autumn meeting. Thanks again for that, Igor. Thank you for availability. Now, Mr. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairperson, honorable members of the Parliamentary Assembly, dear co-panelists, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a distinct pleasure and an honor to be with you today. Thank you so much for the kind invitation to address the General Committee on Economic Affairs, Science, Technology and Environment of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. I understand this is the first time that the Honorable Guliev presides over this committee in his new capacity as chair, and for this I would like to congratulate you, sir. Let me start with our plans to address the economic and environmental consequences of the war against Ukraine. This is particularly pertinent as we approach the first anniversary of the invasion, which happens to coincide with the second day of this winter session. The consequences of the war against Ukraine are widespread and go far beyond the political realm. The economic and environmental impact of the hostilities, for example, is particularly serious, and not least because of the global ramifications in terms of food and energy security, but as well as climate action. Under these circumstances, the Office of the Coordinator for Economic and Environmental Activities has developed new activities that address emerging needs and shifting priorities under the guidance of the Secretary General's whole of the OSCE approach. Our objective is to support the authorities of Ukraine to respond to and mitigate economic and environmental challenges in the current situation and future post-conflict scenario. In this context, my office will continue implementing a project in assessment of the environmental impacts of the war against Ukraine and options for remediation that was launched at the end of last year. Currently, the initial one-year assessment with thematic components is being developed by a group of international and national experts from Ukraine in coordination with the authorities and relevant partners. An expert stakeholder consultation will take place in the upcoming days and will help determine the next steps in the process. We will support the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine with ad hoc trainings on open data, digital tools, and the establishment of e-service platforms. Moreover, in close cooperation with the judiciary, national anti-corruption authorities, and the Asset Management Agency of Ukraine, the activities of the office will aim to strengthen local capacities on asset recovery cases. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change is another topic that is important for the work of my office. In the follow-up to the 2021 Ministerial Council decision on climate change, our activities in this field gained significant momentum in Southeastern Europe, the Southern Caucasus, and Central Asia. In the framework of our flagship project on climate change and security, we are working to assess potential security risks stemming from climate change at the regional level and develop joint measures to address them. Recently, we commissioned also an independent experts analysis on the impacts of the war against Ukraine on climate security and climate action. Let us remember that the Ministerial Council decision on climate change refers specifically to the role of parliamentarians and of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. I am pleased to underline that we have been collaborating with the Parliamentary Assembly on this topic, including through the organization of a special debate on the security implications of climate change and the role of parliamentarians. We plan to organize similar events to share the results of our project work in Southeastern Europe, South Caucasus, Central Asia, and Eastern Europe with you and seek your support. A lot more can be done. Parliaments have an important role in responding effectively to various climate-related risks. Legislators have a wide range of tools and roles they can play, and we're looking forward to further expanding our cooperation with you on this topic. Excellencies, as you are all very well aware, the ongoing war has severely affected the energy security of Ukraine, leading to a spike of energy prices in Europe and the rest of the world. Therefore, energy security will be another central pillar of my office's work for this year. We will support the participating states in making energy safer and more sustainable through renewables and the protection of energy networks from natural and man-made disasters. The Office of the Coordinator for Economic and Environmental Activities' newest initiative to protect critical energy networks from climate change will provide energy practitioners across the OSCE with enhanced predictive capabilities to raise climate resilience in this domain. And I note with pleasure that the authorities of Ukraine have agreed to partake in this initiative, which will contribute to increase the resilience of its critical energy infrastructure from natural and man-made disasters, in particular, as I said, from climate change. Dear participants, providing support to the Central Asian region to address the consequences of the developments in Afghanistan following the Taliban takeover is another priority of the office in 2023. As part of this initiative launched by the Secretary General of the OSCE at the Stockholm Ministerial back in 2021, my office will implement activities designed to enhance the resilience of border communities in Central Asia to tackle challenges on natural resource management imposed by the political insecurity in Afghanistan. Under the same framework, we will finalize an analytical study on the implications of the situation in Afghanistan on Central Asian participating states in terms of trade connectivity. Recommendations will be discussed with participating states in Central Asia and my office with a view to develop further project ideas on how to assist them in confronting potential challenges. Honorable committee members, ladies and gentlemen, corruption and lack of good governance stun economic growth and development. As such, they constitute major threats to stability and security across the OSCE region. With this in mind, the work of the office in the area of good economic governance will aim to improve the business climate of interested participating states through preventing and combating corruption and money laundering, including by using of digital tools and new technologies. Our activities in this domain will target a number of countries in various OSCE sub-regions, including the Republic of Moldova. In cooperation with the relevant national authorities of Chisinau, we will start this year the implementation of a multi-year flagship project aimed at supporting efforts to prevent, investigate, and prosecute corruption crimes. My office will offer its expertise on a number of selected areas, ranging from capacity building of law enforcement agencies to supporting civil society engagement in the fight against corruption. The government of Moldova, along with those of Georgia and Ukraine, will benefit also from another newly launched initiative designed to prevent the use of cryptocurrencies and virtual assets in criminal activities. Project activities will include the preparation of a gap analysis, suggesting necessary amendments to the legislation on virtual assets, and providing specialized trainings for representatives of relevant law enforcement agencies of these three countries. And finally, dear participants, let me add that as in previous years, we will provide assistance, policy advice, and operational support to the current OSCE chair and the participating states in the framework of the main policy dialogue fora of the second dimension. In this respect, I note with regret that the Permanent Council of this organization is not agreeing on the theme, agenda, and modalities of the Economic and Environmental Forum for this year. And I would like to use this opportunity to encourage the participating states to bridge remaining differences and come to an agreement on holding the most important event of the OSCE second dimension. Time is of essence, not least because of the need to ensure the smooth conduct of the whole Economic and Environmental Forum cycle. Moreover, we should not lose sight of the importance to keep the political dialogue going in the second dimension. Frankly, there is no better setting for this dialogue to take place than in the Economic and Environmental Forum. With this, I would like to thank you for your attention and wish the honorable members of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly very successful deliberations today and tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, dear Ambassador, for your really informative and very interesting presentation. I do believe that there are many areas that we can do together for the best interest of our countries and of our assembly and of our OSCE institutions. I should say that the staff of our International Secretariat really enjoys very close working with you, with your talented team, and I have always heard very good things, and they highly speaks about you and about your team. Thank you very much, Ambassador Igil Hassani. Dear colleagues, you have heard extensively from parliamentary and the governmental representatives about our common efforts to promote economic and environmental security in our region. I think it is a right time now to start a debate. I do believe that our distinguished colleagues would have very interesting intervention, and by doing that, I do hope that our distinguished rapporteur and the other colleagues will get some notes of that, and we will of course take into consideration in our future activities. Dear colleagues, I encourage everyone to be constructive, concise, and to the point. Please note that I intend to make full use of my prerogative as a chair under Rules 9 and 27 to ensure a meaningful and respectful debate. 14 committee members have asked to speak under this agenda item. We have only 30 minutes available, so speaking time will be limited to 2 minutes for each intervention. The countdown timer visible on the screen will indicate your remaining time for your intervention. Once it becomes red, please conclude. Now, I will call Mr. Christos Senekis of Cyprus to be followed by Christina Telman of Romania. So, Mr. Senekis, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues, Firstly, I would like to thank Mrs. Kukler as well as Ambassadors Roning and Hassani for their presentations. It is undoubted that the war in Ukraine is severely undermining economic and environmental security. Cyprus, for its part, is committed to supporting initiatives that advance common goals across the OSCE region. High inflation and soaring commodity prices have undermined economic security and have hit particularly hard the low-income households, especially the price of basic agricultural products such as grain remains critical for global food security, and their export from Ukraine must be sustained. I can only express my disappointment that Cyprus cannot participate in the initiative of the UN for the transfer of grain from Ukraine through the Black Sea due to the bans imposed on Cypriot ships by Turkey. In any case, economic security also means diversification in all sectors. Since the onset of the war, Cyprus has had to diversify its tourism sector, which relied heavily on Russian tourists due to the current sanctions in the aviation sector. Perhaps unity in adopting sanctions should be reflected in unity in adopting mitigating measures in the affected economic sectors. Economic security goes hand in hand with energy security. Energy security means affordability, security of supply, and sustainability. The urgent need for diversification must accelerate the green transition. In this regard, Cyprus continues its efforts to provide electricity to Europe from green resources through the Euro-Asia interconnector, and also to become an alternative route for natural gas deliveries to Europe. The ongoing war is having a severe environmental impact. Concerns for radioactive pollution cannot be excluded. In exactly the same manner, we are worried about radioactivity in our neighborhood as well. The recent devastating earthquakes in Turkey and Syria has had so many victims. Our sympathy towards the Turkish and Syrian people is a given. However, it is clear proof of the great risk posed by the nuclear power plant being built by Russian company Rosatom near seismic fault lines in Akyu, the southern Mediterranean shore of Turkey. 1 year from the Russian invasion in Ukraine, the rift in the European security landscape is widening. However, no other organization than the OSCE is better placed to seek common ground, and therefore continuing efforts to find common denominator is our only option. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues. I am not proponent for suspending or for stopping the speech of our distinguished colleagues, because I know how it is not pleasant, but I really ask you to stick to the time limit that we determined together with you. Thank you very much. And now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Christina Telman of Romania, to be followed by Ms. Eva Johanna Eloranta of Finland. Sorry for wrong pronunciation if I made. Ms. Telman, you have the floor.
Yes,
2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear colleagues, containing the challenges of the energy crisis caused by the ongoing aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine, an increasing of resilience of our critical energy infrastructure, in particular the free access of affordable energy resources, are on top of Romania's national agenda. Romanian government is fully determined to promote both energy security and green transition. Romania has been supportive to Ukraine and Republic of Moldova in the energy field by means of targeted assistance and increased interconnectivity. Romania supports a determined collective action involving all relevant stakeholders in fighting climate change in order to implement the Agenda 2030 and the objectives of Paris Agreement. We also support the climate-related proposal from our common agenda of the EU, including the links with biodiversity, pollution, ocean, sustainable food systems, and security. It is obvious that nuclear energy has a great impact for many states in meeting the emission targets. Due to geographical vulnerabilities, Romania views nuclear energy as a robust, low-carbon, reliable energy source with a great contribution to energy security. Global challenges require global solutions. However, countries have very different starting points, energy resources, and consumption needs. A one-size-fits-all solution will be not efficient and create additional gaps between countries, leading to increased economic costs for some states. It is essential that all states make the best use of all sources and technologies available at all national levels in the energy sector. At the same time, there is also a need for massive investments in renewable energy sources as well as the modernization of the infrastructure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Madam Tilman, you were really in time. I appreciate that. It is a good example to be followed by other colleagues. So, dear colleagues, now next speaker, Ms. Eva Johanna Eloranta of Finland, and to be followed by Representatives Mark Visey of United States of America. So, Madam Eloranta, you have the floor.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, Russia's attack on Ukraine has not only huge humanitarian consequences and military ones, but also economic consequences which affect every European citizen. This war is also an energy war, and we all feel it. The rising energy prices and potential electricity cuts across Europe are all created because of the Russian invasion. Energy issues, it has become a common discussion point in all Nordic homes. Mr. Putin is trying to create economic and political chaos in Europe and destabilize the whole region. His actions have been met with a unified front. Europe stands strong, and we will not leave Ukraine behind. Russia's illegal war on Ukraine has lasted long. It has created unimaginable suffering, loss of human lives, but also loss on environment. One aspect of the consequences of war is environmental damage. Much like human memory, nature also has a memory. The direct impact of war on nature is huge. High-intensity conflict consumes vast quantities of fuel, leading to massive CO2 emissions, contributing to climate change. Large-scale vehicle movements have led to widespread physical damage to geodiversity. The use of explosive weapons in urban areas creates vast quantities of debris and rubble, which in turn cause air and soil pollution. Clean water is becoming scarce, and agriculture is suffering. Lack of clean water leads to illnesses. Destruction of built environment leads to lack of jobs. The list is long. Despite of all this, Ukraine is standing strong. This horrible situation gives us, on one hand, the opportunity to improve when it comes to climate change. Russia's Putin could be, in fact, regarded as the single biggest motivator in green transition. We should reduce our energy dependence and use this momentum to transfer to more sustainable energy production and consumption. We should try to think that this crisis is also a possibility to strengthen the green security. How do we adapt to a post-war situation where the scarce nature resources are becoming an even greater threat? Global warming, floods, fires, and massive immigration flows require common actions, and this platform can be the right one to seek common answers. Together, we are stronger.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Florenta, for your intervention. Now, I would like to give the floor to Representative Mark Visey of United States of America, and to be followed by Mr. Igor Shriak of Moldova. So,
thank you.
please,
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Terrorist attacks on critical infrastructure and civilian areas are absolutely intolerable and illegal under international law. Ukrainians are going without heat, without water, and without electricity in the middle of the winter. Every indication is Ukrainian morale is greater than ever, but these horrific conditions must be countered. We cannot allow Russian terrorism. The environmental consequences of these attacks will be long-lasting and far-reaching. In a world already struggling with climate change, the destruction of power stations and utilities infrastructure leads to the less sustainable alternatives in order to survive, not to mention the destruction of the infrastructure itself. Russia has deliberately targeted nuclear power plants in an effort to terrorize Ukraine and all countries in the region. They seek to use nuclear blackmail to terrorize Ukraine into submission and force the democratic world to reward their unlawful invasion. They have also targeted other critical infrastructure in this terror campaign. Russia's dangerous actions connected to nuclear materials reflect their nonchalant attitude towards nuclear weapons, with which they also regularly threaten the world. Russia is demonstrating over and over again that it is not anything like a responsible actor and must be isolated. On that note, with this in mind, we must prepare for massive upheavals as we move energy and other sensitive supply chains away from autocratic powers. We must also fortify our system against global corruption so that we never enable another war like the one being waged against Ukraine by Russia. And let me tell you, beware of the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. It is Nord Stream 3.0. You don't want it. And I just want to close by saying we cannot give in to Russia's nuclear blackmail. Like anything with Putin, he retreats at strength and advances at weakness. It is critical that we condemn his brutal and unprovoked actions, condemn his unacceptable nuclear threats, and continue to support Ukraine. I urge my colleagues to stay the course and support Ukraine. Russian terrorism puts all of humanity in danger. We must respond decisively. Ukrainian victory.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Mark Visey. I now want to give the floor to Mr. Igor Shirak of Moldova, to be followed by Ms. Rupa Hag of United Kingdom. Mr. Shirak, you have the floor.
Dear colleagues, Moldova has also felt the security consequences of the war in Ukraine. The Kremlin has escalated a hybrid subversion campaign against Moldova's effort to build a state democracy and join the European Union. The Kremlin is waging a hybrid war against Moldova. The Russian Federation has started a series of events under the pretext that it went to protect Russian speakers. Russia tried to use the energy crisis, hoping that we will not be able to pay the very high prices for gas and electricity. When they understood that the government of the Republic of Moldova managed this artificially created situation, paid for the Russian gas, Gazprom cut gas supply by 60%, hoping that we will not find alternative sources. The situation with the gas supply from Russia remains uncertain. Russia is using energy as a political weapon against Moldova. It is choking off vital gas supplies to tank the economy. Moldova's economy is very affected by the war in Ukraine. The war has led to further increases in food and energy prices. These items account for a large share of the Moldovan consumer price index basket. Inflationary pressure increased. Russia launched hundreds of missiles on Ukraine, causing widespread damage to energy infrastructure. We felt a direct impact, having blackouts across large parts of Moldova. Republic of Moldova condemns in the strongest possible terms Russia's brutal and unprovoked war of aggression against Ukraine. It is important to be clear that Russia is the aggressor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, dear Igor Shirak. And Now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Rupa Haq of the United Kingdom, to be followed by Mr. David Wells of Canada. Madam Haq, you have the floor.
As a London MP representing a socio-demographically diverse part of the UK's capital city and economic powerhouse, Russia's unprovoked actions have been big. I represent Ukrainian diasporas, old and new. Londoners have opened up their homes to accommodate the latter. All UK MPs stand firm in the desire to see the defeat of Putin, which is so vital for 21st century security, be it energy security, food security, every kind of security. My sizable Armenian diaspora population have also lobbied me about the humanitarian crisis in Nagorno-Karabakh with the Lachin corridor blockade. This also deserves our urgent action, and were it not for Ukraine, I feel it would have more attention. But I want to address another London speciality today. It's helped by UK geography, time zone, English language, and our hot property market, and that is corruption. Perfect recipe for all of those. And we addressed this at the OEC conference in Cyprus last year. Our world is complex. We're beset by climate change. So I understand that corruption is a priority, anti-corruption against many, but arguably it underpins everything. Dirty money stops taxes being collected, people being fed, public services being delivered. And it's embedded in the SDG 16 because it's intrinsic to peace, security, democracy, inclusivity. Those NGO indexes on corruption, the OECD monitoring shows it's rich and poor nations, East and West. We need joined up thinking, transnational between states and cross-departmental within them. Justice, interior, finance is all touched by this. Central and local government need to look at procurement, planning, do these things on merit, not favors for friends. Let us hope and pray, friends, when we meet in Canada, victory is Ukraine's and Nagorno-Karabakh has ended the blockade. The blockade is over. It won't happen overnight, but let's also resolve to fight anti-corruption. We can't wait till 2030. The world is waiting.
Thank you, Madam Haq. And now I recognize Mr. David Wells to deliver his speech from Canada, and to be followed by Mr. Sergei Rashkov of Belarus. Mr. Wells, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, I wish to thank the rapporteur, Madame Kugler, for her report, and in particular, the need for better data and better data management. As the OSCE navigates new and unprecedented challenges, I will share my thoughts on the need to adopt a common approach in imposing economic sanctions and ensuring the full implementation. We have seen how Russia has tried to deter us from supporting Ukraine through manipulation of food and energy markets as the war continues to undermine our economies, increase commodity prices, and disrupt supply chains. The economic dimension of the OSCE has never been more relevant. We must forcefully respond to the attack of Ukraine's sovereignty through a shared approach of sanctions against Russia, and of course, I include Belarus in this. Over the past year, Canada and other like-minded states have imposed wide-ranging and coordinated sanctions on Russia. These include freezing of Russia's central bank reserves, removing many of Russian financial institutions from the international bank messaging system, and the imposition by the EU and the G7 of a price cap for certain services in relation to Russian oil. To effectively impede Russia's ability to continue its war of aggression, a coordinated approach to sanctions must be in place. With improved coordination of export bans and effective tracking of goods flowing to Russia, sanctioning countries can significantly increase the cost of war to Russia. One notable effort includes the Russian elites, proxies, and oligarchs task force, also known as REPO, formed by Canada and its allies. This task force has leveraged extensive multilateral coordination to block or freeze billions of dollars of sanctioned Russian assets, and its members have agreed to take measures to find, restrain, and confiscate high-value goods and other assets of sanctioned individuals and entities. As we implement sanctions, and other restrictive measures against Russia, we must also be vigilant that people and organizations cannot undermine the sanctions put in place. I know of states represented in this assembly that continue to export to Russia using third-party countries for transshipment.
Thank you.
Colleagues, sanctions have proven
Dear
to be a
colleagues,
significant effect on the Russian economy. Our
Please
future work
conclude.
should focus on increasing the number of participating states and further coordinating efforts to ensure compliance and effectiveness. Colleagues, all countries must do their part. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wells. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Sergei Rashkov of Belarus, to be followed by Mr. Zvonimir Troskat of Croatia. Mr. Rashkov, you have the floor.
Уважаемый господин председатель, уважаемые коллеги, в контексте обсуждаемых тем хочу обратить внимание на негативное влияние санкционной экономической политики на социально-экономическое развитие и безопасность суверенных государств, реализацию международной климатической повестки и достижение целей устойчивого развития. Как показывает практика, от санкционной политики несут потери не только те страны, против которых она осуществляется, но и государства, вводящие санкции. Результатом такой политики является углубляющийся мировой экономический кризис, угроза продовольственной безопасности многих стран мира. Параллельно с этим идет разбалансировка энергетического рынка, раскручивается маховик инфляции. От всего этого страдают люди, которых мы представляем как парламентарии. Убежден, что мы все должны задуматься над контрпродуктивностью санкционной политики, поддерживать добросовестную экономическую конкуренцию, содействовать правительствам в реализации насущных экономических задач, волнующих наших граждан. Благодарю вас.
Thank you, Mr. Rashkov. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Zvonimir Troskot from Croatia, to be followed by Ms. Skydirit Abrama of Latvia. Mr. Troskot, you have the floor.
Dear Mr. Guliev, Mrs. Kugler, and Mr. Hassani, thank you very much for your presentation and your speeches. With regards to Russia and Croatia and the region, Russia has several strategic goals in the region. The Kremlin considers the region to be in its strategic interests and maintains close relationships with Serbia and what is so-called the entity of Republic of Srpska and Montenegro, while opposing NATO membership for Albania, North Macedonia, and Montenegro. It seeks to prevent the Western Balkan states of Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, Montenegro, North Macedonia, and Serbia to join the EU and also NATO. It also wants to cut off and destroy any aspirations of NATO and EU or the remaining Balkan countries that have not gained the membership in the alliance, and to disrupt NATO activities in the region. This is the reason why Croatia is closely monitoring Russian economic and intelligence activities in Croatia and its surrounding countries. Not only that, in the last several years, Chinese One Belt and One Road initiative and its associated mechanisms, such as the Platform 14+1, which has served as a regional vehicle for implementing the global vision, have immensely increased the Sino-Balkan interaction at all policy levels. And on this initiative, Croatia has responded with the 3Cs initiative, where we are developing our LNG terminals closely with our allies. We have to praise our moves such as Schengen and Eurozone, and also private sector developments, especially in the IT sectors, where Croatia has a unique position with two unicorns, which are the companies which assets are valued more than $1 billion. From the energy sector, we're developing LNG terminals. We have imposed the sanctions to Russian banks such as Sberbank, and we have moved from we are moving from Russian gas to LNG terminals from which we're supplying our neighboring countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Truscott, for your intervention. As it has been announced, now I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Skaidrita Abrama. Sorry if I just wrongly pronounced your first or surname, from Latvia, and to be followed by Ms. Maria Karapetian of Armenia. So, Madam Abrama, you have the floor. Microphone, please. Please
Okay.
switch on. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Russian terrible aggression to Ukraine gave also to Latvian society and economy a so-called energy lesson. Namely, we suddenly understood how short-sighted we have been relying in our region on Russia's apparently cheap energy resource, natural gas, and not seriously investing in renewable energy sources and efficiency as quick as possible. And this is shocking. But more shocking is what the Ukrainian people are now paying for their freedom and independence. We in Latvia fully support Ukraine because we understand that it's also a fight for our freedom and our independence. And therefore, we are also ready to pay a higher price for energy resources, for food, for our day-to-day needs. The war in Ukraine lets us change what has been delayed in the last decade in our countries and to do it as soon as possible. We understand that in order to obtain more than 40% of energy from wind and solar energy by 2030, administrative barriers must be reduced with regard to creation of wind farms, to install solar batteries, to develop accumulation, expanded use of different renewable energy resources. And the governments have to work with society entrepreneurs to reduce administrative hurdles, as well as support innovation, promote investments, research and development. But first, we have strongly to say to Russia, this aggression and nuclear threats will be not longer tolerated. And Russia must expect severe consequences and sanctions from all countries which support Ukraine, and I hope which also participate in this event and support Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Abrama, for concluding timely your intervention. Now, I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Maria Karapetian of Armenia, to be followed by Mr. Daniyar Tolonov of Kyrgyzstan. Madam Karapetian, please, you have the floor.
Dear colleagues, my intervention is at the juncture of economy, security, and human rights. It has been more than 2 years that Armenia and Azerbaijan have agreed on paper to deblock all economic and transport communications for each other. Yet, instead of deblocking anything, Azerbaijan has chosen to block the Lachin corridor, the only road providing people in Nagorno-Karabakh with a connection with the outer world. Armenia stands ready to reopen all of its communications for Azerbaijan's transit today. The deblocking of all communications in our region is a stand-alone question for us, and we do not have any preconditions for this. Quite the opposite. We believe economic and transport cooperation will positively contribute to the larger agenda of peace of the South Caucasus. The Azerbaijani perspective is different. In their view, the deblocking of communications between Armenia and Azerbaijan is linked with the Nagorno-Karabakh issue. So their condition is that if 120,000 Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh want to use the Lachin corridor as a humanitarian and commercial connection with Armenia and the rest of the world, then Azerbaijan, in their view, should also be entitled to transit without customs and other control through the territory of the Republic of Armenia. So on the one hand, Azerbaijan says that the conflict is over and we should engage in an era of reconstruction and cooperation. But on the other hand, Azerbaijan wants Armenia to bargain with its sovereignty and territorial integrity for the sake of Nagorno-Karabakh. This is not a legitimate demand or condition. The November 9 statement does provide special arrangements for the Lachin corridor to Nagorno-Karabakh, but it does not provide such special arrangement for the deblocking of all communications in the region. It is already for 73 days that Azerbaijan has blocked the corridor, causing a severe and worsening shortage of food, medication, basic necessities, and fuel in Nagorno-Karabakh. In his meeting with the Prime Minister of Armenia and the President of Azerbaijan 5 days ago, the US Secretary of State, direct quote, underscored the need for free and open commercial and private transit through the corridor. He also called on all parties to open other transportation routes. We believe that economic and transport cooperation in the South Caucasus will benefit all societies. We're looking forward to the day when Azerbaijan will also opt out of coercion and harassment and will opt for cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Karapetyan. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Danil Tolonov from Kyrgyzstan, to be followed by Ms. Ida Glasman of Switzerland. So, Mr. Tolonov, you have the floor.
Спасибо. Уважаемый господин председатель, уважаемые коллеги, позвольте мне от имени делегации Джоур-Кенеша Кыргызской Республики поприветствовать председателя комитета, докладчиков и всех приглашенных гостей сегодняшнего зимнего заседания Парламентской ассамблеи ОБСЕ. В начале выступления позвольте выразить глубокие соболезнования нашим турецким коллегам в связи с многочисленными человеческими жертвами, а также большими разрушениями в результате масштабного землетрясения в юго-восточных провинциях Турции. Желаю терпения родным и близким погибших и скорейшего выздоровления пострадавшим в результате стихийного бедствия. Уважаемые коллеги, как вам известно, решение проблемы изменения климата требует комплексного подхода, тесного сотрудничества, принятия неотложенных и практических мер. Вопрос негативных последствий изменения климата касается всех стран мира, в том числе и Кыргызстана, имеющего тысячелетние ледники. С целью сохранения горных экосистем и ледников президентом Кыргызской Республики Садыром Джапаровым 2022 год в Кыргызской Республике объявлен годом защиты горных экосистем и климатической устойчивости. На международном уровне по инициативе Кыргызской Республики Генеральная Ассамблея ООН приняла резолюцию об объявлении 2022 год Международным годом устойчивого горного развития. Также в рамках резолюции Генеральной Ассамблеи ООН устойчивого горного развития нами предложена совместная выработка и принятие пятилетия действий на международном уровне в течение 2023-2027 годов по устойчивому горному развитию. Уважаемые участники, руководство нашей страны обозначило вопросы экологии и зеленой экономики одними из главных приоритетов государственной политики. В настоящее время Кыргызстан сталкивается с проблемой смога, которая стала одной из самых актуальных. Особенно сильно смог появляется в осенне-зимний период, так как немалую долю в этом играет использование угля при отапливании. Кыргызстан взял твердый курс на развитие зеленой экономики. Весь современный мир уделяет этому особое внимание. В этом связи президент Кыргызской Республики Садыр Джапаров выступил с инициативой обменять внешний долг страны на зеленые инициативы. Безусловно, страна в полном мере исполняет и будет дальше исполнять все свои обязательства по выплате внешнего долга. Мы лишь поднимаем инициативу по развитию зеленой экономики и совместному вкладу в улучшение экологической ситуации в мире. Спасибо за внимание.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tolonov, for your intervention. Now I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Ida Glasman of Switzerland, to be followed by our last speaker, Representative Lloyd Doggett from the United States of America. So, Madam Glasman, you have the floor.
Besten Dank, Herr Vorsitzender, geschätzte Damen und Herren. Sicherheit und Zusammenarbeit sind die Grundpfeiler der OSZE, das hat Gudrun Kugler am Anfang erwähnt. Der Krieg in der Ukraine prägt unser Treffen hier. Trotzdem dürfen wir auch die Zukunft dabei nicht vergessen und schauen, dass es auch noch weitere Themen gibt, die uns beschäftigen. Der demografische Wandel wird uns und ganz besonders unsere Wirtschaft und mit dabei auch unser Gesundheitswesen in den nächsten Jahren sehr beschäftigen. Der Arbeitskräftemangel, der Fachkräftemangel ist schon heute ein großes Thema. Die Verschiebung der Arbeitskräfte von Ost nach West, ganz besonders in Europa, ist zwar im Moment noch möglich, aber für die Zukunft wohl kaum zielführend. Ich frage, kann die OSZE hier Empfehlungen abgeben oder zumindest das Problem mitdiskutieren, damit die Mitgliederländer dies wahrnehmen, wie zum Beispiel Zugang zu niederschwelligen Ausbildungen, die verbesserte Anerkennung von Diplomen im Berufsbereich oder bei akademischen Abschlüssen in allen OSZE-Ländern, der Austausch von Fachkräften und auch der Zugang zu den Universitäten. Wir würden es von der Schweizer Delegation begrüßen, wenn diese Aspekte der Wirtschaft bei der Planung auf die Sommertagung mit einbezogen würden. Besten Dank.
Thank you very much, Madam Glansman, for your intervention. Now I'd like to give the floor to our last speaker in my list, Representative Lloyd Doggett from the United States of America.
Thank you very much,
Senator
Mr.
Doggett, you have
Chairman.
the floor.
Mr. Chairman and colleagues, in this committee, as in all other committees and deliberations of OSCE, the one overwhelming issue is the ongoing war crimes of the Russian Federation and its accomplices. The horrific targeting of civilians, of schools, of hospitals, of homes for the elderly, stealing grain, the destruction of electrical power infrastructure. It's devastating to the Ukrainian economy, but it has a ripple effect around the world, particularly as it adds to starvation in some of the world's poorest countries. Russia's use of its fossil fuels to fuel criminal war machine activities and to extort and blackmail those countries that have been dependent upon it for energy is a further alert to all of us that we need less dependence on fossil fuels and less fossilized thinking. We already are experiencing a serious and true climate crisis in the world. As we reunite to rebuild Ukraine after a Ukrainian victory, let's heed the sound advice of E3G, an important international NGO promoting a renewable and sustainable future for the world. Let's help Ukraine rebuild using its large potential for solar and wind energy. Ukraine can help lead the effort to decarbonize Europe and the world. Ending our reliance on fossil fuels will not only save our planet, but more immediately can help save us all from the blackmail of petro dictatorships. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues, dear friends. With that, I declare this debate is closed. And then under this agenda item, I do hope that we will have a chance to have a debate on other item. But before concluding, I'd like to ask our distinguished rapporteur and honorable guest whether they would have to take the floor to make some comments, if may have possible comments or reaction. Maybe we start from our rapporteur, Madame Gudrun. We have maybe 1 or 2 minutes if you want to give some feedback from the
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of you for everything that was said. I took careful notes. I noted a number of terms that I would like to look more deeply into, that are terms like energy independence, energy justice, mitigation of effects. Also blackouts and attacks on infrastructure, I think, need to be particularly mentioned, as I took note now in this debate, and many concrete suggestions I noted. So thank you very much for this. Please do not hesitate to contact me whenever ideas come to your mind. I will be working on a report and draft resolution, especially until our meeting in April in Copenhagen. So there is the time is now. The next 1.5 months would be the best for your feedback. And I do very much look forward to our next meeting and the continuation of our debate in Vancouver.
Thank you, Gudrun. Thank you very much. When Gudrun said April, she meant the bureau meeting in April. So I'm looking forward to, hearing your, draft resolution or the report also in the bureau meeting to be taking place in Copenhagen 23-24 April. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to ask Ambassador Eagle Hassani, and then I will ask also Ambassador Florian Raugin to take the floor to comment if they wish. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I took good note of the excellent points that were raised by you, distinguished delegates. We look forward to continue our thematic work with what I explained in my intervention. First and foremost, to help and support our friends in Ukraine, to continue to keep an eye on our friends in Moldova and in other sub-regions of the OSCE. This year is quite difficult, and we need more and more political support from you. But thank you for everything you have done so far. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Hassani. Now I'd like to ask Ambassador Rowning for the comment, please. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just would like to align with the words of Ambassador Hassani. I have not very much to add to that. Thank you for your suggestions. I listened very carefully. We have a difficult year ahead, but let's try to have a good and close cooperation between Parliamentary Assembly and the EEC. Thanks a lot for invitation and all the best.
Thank you very much. I'd like once again thank our distinguished rapporteur and the honorable guest speakers for their very interesting intervention, for being with us today. And if, dear Ambassador, you have the time to stay till the end of the session, we will be very happy. If not, of course, we would like to again thank you very much. Looking forward to continue our cooperation and discussion. As I mentioned, maybe in the coming future we can have some joint session of the two committees to address the challenging issues that are on the political agenda for Assembly. Thank you very much. Thank you. Dear colleagues, now I'd like to move on the next item of our agenda, which is about the special debate. We have very carefully drafted the agenda in close cooperation with our secretary, with Marco and the other colleagues, and they decided that this topic could be relevant to the current situation, and I do believe that it will also interesting for you. So the debate we call the special debate we call the affordable, secure, clean and sustainable energy in the OSCE region, prospects and challenges. Dear colleagues, as you know, energy security lies at the very core of our mandate, and it directly affects our collective security. Paraphrasing my dear friend and former chair of the committee, Pierre Pons, in the context of climate change, there can be no collective security without energy security. I'd like to share his idea, and this is why the energy security is one of the challenging issues in the OSCE region. Dear colleagues, this has become utterly clear during the last year. The war in Ukraine has bluntly reminded us the importance of changing our approach towards energy dependency and energy consumption, as well as building strong and resilient energy infrastructure. Diversifying our energy sources, making energy cleaner, safer, and more affordable is a must. Equally, the urgency to better protect our climate, planet, and health have urged us to reconsider profoundly the way we produce, store, transfer, and consume energy. As it was stressed in our parliamentary web dialogue from February last year, what we need is a clean energy revolution that can fit our development needs while safeguarding our planet and our independence. To this end, there are a greatest need for our countries and international community to mainly focus on, first, forward-looking policies and strategies informed by the latest scientific findings. Second, growing investment in new technologies and energy efficiency. Third, solid public-private partnerships for engagement of civil society and local communities. 5, strong cooperation among our countries. And 6, frequent sharing of lessons learned, including failures. These are all critical elements in the path towards achieving more affordable, secure, clean, and sustainable energy for the benefit of all. If during the Warsaw Autumn meeting, we looked at the threats stemming from energy insecurity, today's session will allow us to explore prospects and opportunities in this context, as well as better understand the links between energy, sustainable development, and climate change. Timing is key in this crisis. There is an urgency to act. However, drawing from last year's annual session in Birmingham, we also know that the energy transition implies gradual changes and structural ruptures with significant socio-economic repercussions. It is therefore crucial to find the right balance to overcome these challenges. Dear colleagues, now I would like to warmly welcome Director Wei Huang from the International Atomic Energy Agency, where he leads the Division of Energy Planning, Information and Knowledge Management. Mr. Huang, thank you very much for joining us in person. It is very much appreciated. We are all big fans of the work conducted by the agency, including under the safeguard system or in the context of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. As a matter of fact, we have repeatedly echoed the agency's call for the immediate establishment of a safe zone around Ukrainian nuclear reactors. The consequences of any accident in this sphere would be dreadful for our region. But today, I look forward to learning more from you about the power of atoms in providing clean, secure, and affordable energy for all. In particular, I would be interested to know what the agency is doing in the context of nuclear fusion, which I understand to be finally within our reach. So, Mr. Huang, the floor is yours. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for inviting agency to this special session. And also thank you for your complimentary words to agency, especially some aspect you are expecting or you already work with the agency about this safety, security, and also non-proliferation. Obviously, that is also within agency mandates. As agency is intergovernmental organization within the UN system specializing in nuclear. We have our clear mandate and responsibility governed by our statute and also our governing bodies. Today, I just try to address this issue, that is the role of nuclear energy in addressing this affordable, secure, clean, and sustainable energy as a solution to the current global crisis. So I might be ready to respond after my presentation regarding some other aspects you already mentioned in the opening. So let me just quickly go through the slides and to reflect some information about what this nuclear power's role in addressing the global challenges. So it's working somewhere, should I? Okay, yes. So as you all know, the energy is an indispensable element of our daily life. It is a crucial to human being and civilization and sitting in the core of 2030 agenda, another name SDGs, which is adopted in 2015. So within this SDG, and one is SDG 7, they have a number of the key pillars. One of them is this universal access to the affordable, secure, clean, and sustainable energy. So the following slides will give you some, sorry. Okay, so this slides give you some illustrative information about two SDG indicators, one on the universal access. You can see the progress has been made and the number of the non-access has come down to 733 million in the past decade. So remaining non-access is mainly in the sub-Saharan region. On this indicator, OSCE countries are quite good. Another indicator of SDG 7 is on the clean cooking, following the definition of WHO, which is the population access to clean cooking, fuel, and technologies. Currently is around 69%. So within the OSCE region, a few parties, mainly from Eastern Europe and Central Asia, have some access gap. Maybe it's a little bit delay. Okay. So from SDG tracking report, the world is still not on track to achieve the SDG goals by 2030, particularly in the most vulnerable countries, not only because of the pandemic in the past 3 years, but an energy crisis caused by the conflict in Ukraine. So this global energy crisis adding up to another global emergency climate change will make the objective set by Paris Agreement limited temperature rise to 1.5 degree above the pre-industrial level more difficult, and also the objective of the SDGs more difficult. To achieve this net zero target by the middle of the century, the world needs to urgently reduce global greenhouse gas emissions from all activities and sectors. So IEA has recommended two key elements to be addressed: extensive electrification and the deployment of other low carbon energy carriers like hydrogen and other synthetic fuels and extras. So this really need all available carbon technology, including nuclear power, to work together. So from many studies on nuclear energy, including one of the three, these three dimensions: economic, environmental, and social of sustainable development. So nuclear is favorable in many indicators. They have also contributed to most SDGs directly and indirectly. Let me see, it's just here slow. So this is the like indicators I just mentioned, and also the contribution directly, indirectly to the SDGs. And I will go additional slides to elaborate a little bit in detail. So first, as a low carbon energy source, I have been, this nuclear has helped to avoid 74 to 78 gigaton greenhouse gas in a half century, and continue to avoid more than 1 gigaton greenhouse gas with current capacity. Because it's a high energy intensity, it takes much less land footprint than other low carbon energy sources, and also less critical minerals. So based on many studies, including IMF, it can bring the valuable social economic benefit, which is important for just transition. So as all low carbon technology and the characterized by the high proportion of overnight investment. So it's just a little bit today. Let me see how fast it can go. So as all low carbon technology are characterized by a high proportion of overnight investment of financial costs, and nuclear can still be competitive if they can enjoy the similar enabling policy to the renewable. Nuclear can be also operate in a flexible manner. Load following is one of the basic features of advanced reactor design. This is important to help more penetration of renewable in the market. Last but not least, the statistics show that nuclear is quite resilient through its operation is also, though its operation is also impacted by the extreme weather like other energy technologies. So nuclear can also provide help to decarbonize other sectors like industry heat, district heating, hydrogen production, and the nuclear district heating has been widely used through the current capacity. So this chart came from the 2021 and agency publication. So you can see last year, let me see, wait a bit. So this is a chart reflecting the current nuclear heating application. And also additionally, there are 3 projects that start to operate in one member state last year, because this is information is 2021. So as for the hydrogen, some number of countries are using the existing nuclear power with the electrolyzers to produce hydrogen, and some countries are conducting R&D with advanced reactors, including SMR for hydrogen production. So let me quickly go through this another slide. So this overview about the nuclear worldwide. So as for, you can see from this OSCE, the 32 countries are operating more than 423 reactors and 50 reactors under the construction. So nuclear electricity accounts for 9.8% total electricity worldwide. So as for OSCE countries, next slide I'm going to. Okay, so you can see from here, 21 parties of OSCE are running more than 280 reactors, account for 2/3 of the total installed capacity of the world. and the nuclear electricity generation in the OSCE account for 20% of total electricity. So in contrast, as for the 56 reactor under the construction worldwide, only 1/3 of the installed capacity is within the OSCE countries. So what about the future? And the agency has one methodology to project nuclear capacity by 2050. It has been used more than 40 years. Its 2022 projection has revised up the high case of nuclear power generation capacity by 10% compared with the 2021. The climate change mitigation and energy security, including the geopolitical tension and military conflict in Europe, are main drivers of this decision to continue or expand the use of nuclear power. So when looking at the regional projection, you can see some disparities. The projection of low case of Northern America, Northern Western, and Southern Europe are going down, when the rest of the region are either remaining flat or going up. Some uncertainty in this region, I'm talking about this North America and the Northern and the Western and Southern Europe, due to its policy and the market factors. So as intergovernmental organization, agency provide various capacity building and advice service to our member state to allow them to formulate evidence-based climate and energy policy in line with the objective of Paris Agreement and SDGs. Agency also respect the sovereign decision of the countries on including or not including nuclear in their energy mix. So when country decide to use the nuclear, agency can provide broad support, technical service, advice to member states. So in the past years, our leadership, DG GROSI, launched one nuclear harmonization and standardization initiative to facilitate the discussion on the regulatory harmonization and industrial standardization, with aim at facilitating the deployment of advanced reactors technology, including SMR. He also launched Atoms for Net Zero initiative in COP27 to facilitate international cooperation to release potential of nuclear power, and his leadership agency also had a quite active engagement in COPs, including the COP26, 27, and also we are going to do the same in the coming COP28. So some takeaways. Addressing the compounding crisis need all available low carbon technologies and all stakeholders on board. So nuclear is gaining more recognition on its role for climate mitigation, system resilience, and energy security. So in order to release its full potential, some challenges need to be addressed, such as enabling environment, innovation breakthrough, economics, competitiveness improvement, etc. So nuclear has been a solution to the climate change and the global issues, and will continue to do so to help this decarbonization and to achieve the net zero target. So in October of this year, we're going to organize the second international conference on climate change and the role of nuclear power. We welcome the members of the OSCE to join us to debate on this topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear Director Wang, for your really interesting presentation. I do hope that our colleagues also found it very much informative and also interesting. And I do think that we will continue our cooperation in the future. And again, I am very grateful for being with us in person. And I will appreciate if you be able to stay with us until the end of this session. Thank you very much. Now, dear colleagues, I'd like to move on our next speaker. I'm truly delighted to introduce our next guest speaker, Professor Stephen Konin, a prominent scientist with extensive policy experience in energy security. He is joining us on Zoom from the United States. Currently, he's serving as professor at New York University. He used to be the U.S. Undersecretary of Science in the Department of Energy within the Obama administration. Previously, he taught at the California Institute of Technology and served as chief scientist for British Petroleum. Professor Konin, considering your impressive background, I am keen to hear your take about how we can boost energy security in our vast region under these complex circumstances. Professor, you have the floor. So our technology.
Thank you.
Place, I hope.
Thank you.
Please,
can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I prefer to deliver technical advice to decision makers with the goal of informing rather than persuading, because I know that there are factors beyond science and technology that go into policy decisions. But because this is a debate and the time is short, I'm going to tell you what I think should characterize climate and energy policies in the developed countries. First, governments must sustain and improve climate science because our knowledge is not what it should be. Beyond continuing observations, there are special needs for greater statistical rigor in the analyses and for more focused modeling efforts to reduce uncertainties. Second, we must improve communications to the public. Human influences on the climate are growing, and we should be working to reduce them. But neither the data, nor the research literature, nor the IPCC reports, as distinct from their summaries, support the notion, now almost an incantation, that drastic action is needed to avoid the worst effects of climate change. You're probably asking yourself, how could he possibly say that? Well, consider that even as the globe warmed 1.3 degrees since 1900, we've seen the greatest improvement in the human condition ever. The population quintupled, lifespan grew from 32 to 72 years, and GDP per capita grew sevenfold. Importantly, the weather-related death rate declined by a factor of 50 over the last 120 years. So it's hard to believe that the further 1.3 degrees of warming over the next century projected by the IPCC would reverse or even significantly slow that progress. In fact, the IPCC reports and the research literature say, although sotto voce, that for a warming of as much as 3 degrees, the global economy in 2100 would be a few percent smaller than it would have been otherwise. Hardly a catastrophe. So governments have to give the public an accurate view of both climate and energy that gets beyond slogans like, we're on a highway to hell with our foot still on the accelerator. The public will dismiss unsupported scare stories, perhaps they already have, and so credibility is eroded. Third, governments need to acknowledge that energy reliability and affordability take precedence over emissions reductions. Europe's current energy crisis could well have been avoided. Fossil fuel investments and domestic production were abandoned in favor of unreliable import partners and unreliable wind and solar generation that works only when the weather allows it to. It was easy to see that this would lead to trouble, but mitigation was deemed more important than reliability and affordability. Fourth, governments must embark on thoughtful and graceful decarbonization programs that respect technology, economics, regulation, and behavior. An essential element is research, development, and demonstration of emissions-light technologies to reduce the so-called green premium. Small nuclear reactors, grid storage and management, batteries, non-carbon chemical fuels, and carbon capture and storage would be on my list of the most promising early stage technologies today. But programs that go beyond demonstration to large-scale installation should not be the scattershot mandates and incentives that are currently in vogue. Energy is delivered by complex systems that touch every aspect of society. Those systems change slowly for good reasons. Facilities live for decades, they have to work together, and they're tuned for high reliability. If you want to electrify automobiles and building heat and decarbonize the grid in a hurry, you're almost certain to degrade reliability, increase costs, and make a lot of people mad. Energy systems are best changed gradually, more like orthodontia, not tooth extraction. And in fact, precipitous climate action can be more disruptive than climate change itself. Fifth, developed countries have to acknowledge the inevitability, and I would say the desirability, of meeting the developing world's energy needs. Most of the world today is energy starved. The development of 6.5 billion people over the next 30 years will increase global energy demand by about 50%. Fossil fuels today are the most convenient and reliable way of meeting that demand. In fact, they provide about 80% of the world's energy now, as they have for the past many decades. Weather-dependent wind and solar generation will not do for these people without costly backup systems. I've asked many advocates of rapid global decarbonization what they would do about the developing world's energy needs. Unfortunately, I've yet to hear an answer that respects technical, economic, demographic, and political realities. And in your own country's decarbonization plans must assure that the poor have the energy that they need. The global trends in demographics, in development, and in energy technologies lead most people, including John Kerry, to conclude that global net zero will not be achieved by 2050. I would go further to say it's quite unlikely to be achieved by 2100. That doesn't mean giving up on emissions reductions, but it also doesn't mean catastrophe. But it does mean a greater emphasis on alternative strategies for dealing with a changing climate. Most important is adaptation. Adaptation happens by itself. It's what we humans do, and it's been very effective. Storms, floods, droughts, fires, sea level rise are nothing new. So if nothing else, your government should work to facilitate adaptation, both domestically and in the developing world. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, dear Professor, for your thought-provoking presentation. I really appreciate your availability to be connected with us. And within our committee, we have always strived to integrate science into our debates, treating it as a strong ally in our work. Ultimately, policymakers should take full responsibility for their decisions, which must be informed by solid science and duly balance many political, economic, and social considerations, with the understanding that science itself evolves. So thank you very much again, dear Professor. Now, distinguished colleagues, dear friends, I'd like to announce our final guest speaker, who is Mr. John Aldag. He is a member of the Canadian delegation and sponsor of the resolution on accelerating the green energy transition presented at the 29th OECP annual session in Birmingham. The resolution highlights the importance of recognizing and mitigating climate change, notably through green energy innovation. It also underlines the environmental, economic, and security benefits offered by the green energy transition. Dear John, thanks for taking the time and joining us in person. So we are looking forward to listening to you. You have the floor.
Great. Thank you so much, Honorable Chair and fellow parliamentarians. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to contribute to the special debate on sustainable energy in the OSCE region. My name is John Aldag, and I'm a member of Parliament from Canada. I'm also chair of our Standing Committee on Natural Resources. For more than 30 years, I had the privilege of working for Parks Canada, our national park services. And I worked in national parks and national historic sites around Canada that manage and protects these important areas. That work took me to many remote parts of Canada and gave me a deep appreciation for our natural environment. It also underscored for me the threat that climate change poses to our communities and the urgency of acting now to accelerate our transition to a green energy. As we know, the past decade was the hottest in human history. Ocean heat is at record levels, while Arctic sea ice has been on a decades-long pattern of decline. We're seeing the loss of glaciers and mountainous terrains around the globe. According to a recent report by the UN Climate Change, the combined pledges of all parties to the Paris Agreement are well below what would be required to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. Most worrying, CO2 emissions from fossil fuels rose to their highest levels ever in 2022, while global coal demand reached an all-time peak. Last year's jump in coal was driven by several factors, including higher natural gas prices and the global energy crisis sparked by Russia's war of aggression on Ukraine. This war against Ukraine also highlights the need to have a secure source of energy for the OSCE area that does not rely on Russian energy. While the International Energy Agenda expects the increase in coal use in Europe to be temporary as renewables displace it, coal use in developing and emerging economies is expected to continue to grow. Transitioning away from coal is critical because it is responsible for more emissions than any other fossil fuel. In 2022, coal represented approximately 40% of total global CO2 emissions from fossil fuels. In a speech at a COP27 last year, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres reiterated a call to phase out the use of coal in OECD countries by 2030 and everywhere else by 2040. More broadly, Secretary General Guterres said that a climate solidarity pact between developed and emerging economies was required in order to reduce emissions and provide universal, affordable, and sustainable energy to all. Colleagues, the renewable resources and technologies necessary to meet our energy needs are at our disposal. According to a 2022 report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, since 2010, there have been sustained decreases of up to 85% in the cost of solar and wind and batteries. Continued investment and innovation in the renewable energy sector has the potential to further reduce prices and dependence on fossil fuels. The commitments outlined in the REPower EU plan to scale up the use of renewable energy in power generation, industry, and transport is a significant step in this direction. I'd also like to highlight the US Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA, which was enacted last year. This legislation will play an important role in the fight against climate change. According to industry estimates, the IRA has the potential to triple US clean energy production, which could result in about 40% of the country's electricity coming from wind, solar, and energy storage by 2030. Canada, the EU, and others have raised concerns about the IRA from trade, investment, and competitiveness perspectives. I won't elaborate on these concerns, which are well known. What I will say, however, is that the IRA requires other countries to rethink how we invest and compete in the clean energy space. It also calls for us to redouble our efforts to connect the opportunities presented by clean energy with political will. We need governments to commit to ambitious targets for reaching net zero emissions and to translate these pledges into policies. At last year's annual session in Birmingham, I was proud to sponsor a resolution entitled Accelerating the Green Energy Transition. The resolution is framed around the need for ambitious global climate action to limit global temperature increases to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. The resolution contains a number of specific action items for accelerating the use of green technologies. These include increasing investment in technologies for the production and use of low-carbon hydrogen, employing market mechanisms such as carbon pricing to incentivize the transition to a low-carbon economy and to promote clean economic growth, and supporting research and development around carbon capture, utilization, and storage technologies. It also urges participating states to take measures to enhance and achieve their nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. Recognizing that a green energy transition must be just and beneficial for workers, the resolution also calls on OSCE participating states to take proactive action to support workers and communities in the transition to a net zero carbon economy. We must also ensure that energy, particularly clean energy, is affordable, as noted by Rapporteur Kugler's introductory comments. As we see Russia's war on Ukraine affect prices globally, we must ensure that energy throughout the OSCE region is affordable. This is not to minimize the significant humanitarian and environmental impacts of Russia's war on Ukraine, but further highlight this war affects us all. I'd like to express my gratitude to my OSCE-PA colleagues for adopting this resolution. As parliamentarians, we have an important role to play in shaping our climate commitments and supporting their implementation. As we approach the annual session in Vancouver this summer, I would like to welcome the opportunity not only to welcome delegates to Canada, but also to build on last year's resolution by collaborating with colleagues across the OSCE-PA on ideas to support sustainable energy. I also look forward to reading Rapporteur Kugler's report and draft resolution ahead of the annual session. Thank you once again for the opportunity to address this session. And thank you to the entire leadership of the Second Committee for your ongoing commitment to these important energy and environmental issues. Now is the time for positive leadership by elected officials in leading a thoughtful yet urgent transition to a decarbonized economy. I look forward to this discussion today to further explore the prospects and challenges of our move to an affordable, secure, clean, and sustainable energy in the OSCE region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear John. Indeed, we are very much grateful for your personal efforts and engagement in bringing such important issues on our agenda, and also for drafting the resolution that adopted in our last annual session. And also, of course, we are very much looking forward to continuing our cooperation and to having the fruitful annual session in Birmingham, in Vancouver. So I think it would be great for us all to come together in Canada and, of course, discuss the issues that we have on our agenda. Thank you very much again. I hope that we will have a very, very interesting debate now. And then before giving the floor, I'd like to announce some technicality concerning the debate and time limit. Dear colleagues, we have received 15 applications who asked to speak under this agenda. So 15 speakers are in my list. I'd like to remind you again that we have only 2 minutes to each of the speakers, and the timer will be visible on the screen. And I hope that this timer will help you to conclude in due time. And I want to again to remind you that as a chair of the committee, I'm intended to make full use of my prerogative under rules 9 and 27, and respectful, and of course to organize, to ensure the meaningful and respectful debate. So, dear colleagues, now we start debate on this agenda, and first speaker in my list is Ms. Agnieszka Pomaska of Poland. I hope that I pronounce correctly. To be followed by Mr. Mehmet Said Kirazoğlu of Turkey. So, Madam Pomaska, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's not possible to talk about energy issues without touching the issue of political situation. And in this room and other rooms during this session, quite often it's mentioned that Russian aggression caused crisis in OSCE in many, many spheres. But every crisis is also a challenge. That means it's also a chance. First, Russians wanted to divide us. Did they succeed? No, the opposite. Second, Russians wanted to make an energy crisis and wanted us to be more dependent on their resources, their energy. Were they successful? Definitely not. The opposite. And especially in Poland, we are really glad that Nord Stream 2 project has ended. Of course, at the same time, we concentrate more on green energy, wind energy, solar energy, and it's simply very beneficial for our countries. We don't and we will not need Russian resources anymore. Third, Russians put sanctions also on European politicians and American politicians. Is it a problem for us? Rather the opposite. I'm on a blacklist, Russian blacklist, since 2015, and I'm very proud of it. Is it a problem to be on a European sanction list for Russians? Definitely yes. They're crying every day that they cannot use their villas, their yachts in many countries in Europe and in the world. They will not break Ukrainians. They will not break us in Europe. And of course, it's a huge tragedy, the war. But it will make us definitely stronger. And last but not least, all the Russian crimes will be punished. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Pomaska. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Mehmet Said Kirgizoglu from Turkey, to be followed by Mr. Tobias Winkler of Germany. Mr. Kirgizoglu, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Dear colleagues, first of all, I'd like to express my thanks and gratitude to all those who sent their condolences, support, and aid and helped in search and rescue operations following the earthquake disaster in Turkey. Our friends were with us again in this disaster, where we once again saw the importance of unity and solidarity. I'd like to once again express my condolences to the families and relatives of the citizens who lost their lives in Gaziantep, where I am a member of parliament, and other provinces affected by the earthquake. Now, distinguished participants, we are facing a global energy crisis. Energy supply security is at the forefront. Our priority should be uninterrupted, affordable, and sustainable energy supply. We should act with strategic wisdom to diversify energy sources. Current outlook requires closer cooperation among all actors. Turkey actively contributes energy security of Europe for decades. Turkey considers energy as an area of cooperation. We are open to cooperation in Eastern Mediterranean as well. Energy projects should be inclusive, feasible, and contribute to regional cooperation and energy security, such as electricity interconnection project between Turkey and Cyprus. The Southern Gas Corridor is a critical infrastructure for EU's energy security. Trans-Anatolian Pipeline is the backbone of this corridor. It can be bolstered with additional gas capacities. Also, clean energy transition is an important pillar of energy security. However, it requires better calibration, coordination, and management at the national, regional, and global levels. With reference to some comments in the previous agenda item, I'd like to clarify that the Green Deal has been initiated by the facilitation of UN and Turkey with the participation of Ukraine and Russian Federation. The deal prevented the global food crisis. We attach utmost importance to the effective implementation of this mechanism without politicization. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear Mehmet. Taking this opportunity, I would like to express once more the deepest condolences on behalf of the committee and all the members to those who lost their beloved ones as a result of the devastating earthquake. And we wish the soonest recovery those who became a victim and the injured. So it is good that all the international community and the members of the OSCE standing shoulder to shoulder to the people, with the people of Turkey, and they express their solidarity. Thank you. Now, dear friends, I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Tobias Winkler of Germany, to be followed by Mr. Pascal Alizard of France. Mr. Winkler, you have the floor.
Dear Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and thank you very much for these kind words towards Turkey, which I want to fully support. Dear colleagues, energy security is a global challenge, and the OSCE is one of the platforms we have to discuss solutions. But taking into regard tomorrow's state, 1 year of Russian invasion on Ukraine, please allow me to focus on the combination of both severe issues. We support Ukraine in many ways: humanitarian, militarily, and financially. It is in our mutual interest to support the Ukrainian economy and to maintain local value creation, even or especially in these difficult times. Energy security is not only for environmental or economic reasons important, but it's also a humanitarian act. Russia attacks the civil energy infrastructure, which violate international law, and they aim to endanger the population during cold winters. Anyone
who thinks of Ukraine these days will not first think of investments in renewable energies. But what many types of renewable energies have in common is that they are generated decentrally and that energy can be generated more or less independently of supply and logistic chains. For this reason too, we should use our network within the OSCE, our broad knowledge and the skills of innovative companies to support Ukraine in using decentralized energy supply to make it more resilient, stronger than before and fit for the future. Hopefully very soon in peace and prosperity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Winkler, for your intervention. Now I'd like to give the floor to Vice President of our Assembly, Mr. Pascal Alizade. After Mr. Alizade, Miss Deirdre Brock from United Kingdom will have the floor. So, Pascal, you have the floor, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je voudrais moi aussi adresser mes condoléances, mon soutien et ma solidarité au peuple turc suite au tremblement de terre. Les autorités russes, mes chers collègues, n'ont pas hésité à déclencher une violente opération militaire contre un État souverain, l'Ukraine. Baptisée opération spéciale, c'est en fait une vraie guerre d'invasion qui vise à la conquête de territoires, mais aussi qui vise à la mainmise sur l'économie et sur l'énergie. Cette situation fait aussi le jeu de pays comme la Chine et comme l'Iran. Et je constate combien il est judicieux aujourd'hui pour les Chinois d'avoir mis en place des outils financiers alternatifs qui peuvent être proposés à la Russie. Ces entreprises russes qui se tournent vers le yuan pour leurs contrats, pratique qui pourrait s'ancrer et durer, et la Russie d'ailleurs qui annonce que la relance du marché d'échange et de l'énergie allait permettre de privilégier le yuan pour se dédollariser, pour reprendre leurs termes. Alors, mes chers collègues, pour les pays de l'OSCE, le chemin de crête est étroit et tout en gardant ouverts des canaux de dialogue, il me semble important de maintenir une ligne de fermeté vis-à-vis de l'agresseur russe. Et par considération vis-à-vis de nos pays partenaires de l'OSCE, pays asiatiques, pays d'Afrique du Nord, je crois que notre Assemblée, notre organisation doit être vigilante à ce basculement vers l'Asie, vers l'Afrique et porter une attention plus soutenue aux actions indirectes qui sont des actions économiques, qui sont des actions d'influence menées sur l'Asie et sur l'Afrique. Car si cette guerre militaire, entre guillemets, a bien lieu sur le territoire ukrainien, j'attire votre attention sur le fait que la guerre économique, la guerre énergétique et la guerre technologique se passent loin des pays de l'OSCE, mais nous ne pouvons pas ne pas regarder. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Alizade, for your intervention. Now I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Deirdre Brock from United Kingdom, to be followed by Ms. Maria Carmen Martinez of Spain. Madam Brock, you have the floor. Please switch on microphone. Yes.
Yes. Working. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and may I associate myself with all the comments made about those who've suffered as a result of the earthquakes in Turkey. Colleagues, as we've heard today many times, this is a time of unprecedented uncertainty in global and national energy markets, which further heighten, beyond the crucial importance of addressing the climate crisis, the need to create decarbonised, affordable and secure energy systems. A key objective for the Scottish Government is to deliver a more secure, self-sufficient energy mix that delivers lower costs for consumers. By 2030, we aim to generate 50% of Scotland's overall energy consumption from renewable sources, and by 2050 to have decarbonised our energy system almost completely. More than 60% of the UK's onshore wind installed capacity is already generated in Scotland. We are home to two of the world's largest operational floating wind farms, with a third under development, and permits recently awarded to projects with a combined potential generating capacity of more than 28 gigawatts. Through Scotland's abundant renewable resources, it's our ambition to generate enough cheap green electricity to power our economy, whilst also creating a surplus for new export opportunities and to support the decarbonisation of industry across Europe and beyond. We must also look urgently to renewable and low carbon hydrogen production to help provide a solution for parts of our economy and energy systems that are very difficult to electrify. Our focus will be on developing flexible renewable technologies rather than new nuclear plants, which are expensive and take decades to deliver. Scotland is fortunate to be an energy-rich nation. We are determined to harness this, not only for our domestic needs, but to play our part in an international drive towards a clean, sustainable and secure energy future.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Brok. Now I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Maria Carmen Martinez of Spain, to be followed by Mr. Zvonimir Tloskot of Croatia. Madam Martinez, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, presidente. Desde Ciudadanos, el Partido Liberal Español, queremos expresar nuestra rotunda condena a la terrible invasión de Ucrania perpetrada por el tirano Vladimir Putin. No puede haber seguridad económica ni ambiental mientras esta invasión se siga manteniendo. Esta terrible invasión es una afrenta a los valores europeos, al derecho internacional y a las reglas que todas las naciones del mundo nos hemos dado para nuestra convivencia pacífica. En lo relativo al medio ambiente hay que dar una cifra. La invasión ha provocado ya más de 2.300 casos de destrucción ambiental con un coste de 48.300 millones de euros en daños. Mientras hay países que ya nos planteamos, por ejemplo, estrategias de adaptación al cambio climático de los diferentes sectores, Ucrania deberá centrarse en reconstruir su economía, cosa que espero que suceda lo antes posible. Las consecuencias de esta invasión para el resto de países ha sido una llamada de atención sobre la excesiva dependencia de las fuentes de energía rusas. Y la Unión Europea ha hecho un gran esfuerzo trabajando muy duro para reducir esa dependencia, cosa de la que como española europea me siento muy orgullosa. Para los liberales, nuestro modelo de energía limpia y segura se basa en tres pilares: reducir los trámites burocráticos para facilitar el desarrollo de energías renovables y apoyar esto en el segundo pilar, que es extender la vida útil de las centrales nucleares y reforzar sus medidas de seguridad. Aprovecho para agradecer el informe que aquí se ha expuesto sobre la energía nuclear, que nos parece muy importante. En España se está pensando en no ampliar la vida de las centrales nucleares, cosa que será bastante negativa para apoyar la ampliación y el desarrollo de estas energías renovables que en España, por ejemplo, son muy importantes y muy seguras. Y como tercer pilar, creemos que hay que aprovechar mejor los embalses y las presas como fuentes de almacenamiento de energía para periodos de escasez. Para finalizar mi intervención, quería también mostrar nuestras condolencias con Turquía por las pérdidas ante el terremoto sucedido recientemente. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much, Madam Martinez. I was told that Mr. Troscott has withdrawn his name from the list of speakers. Now, I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Diloram Feyzieva from Uzbekistan, to be followed by Mr. Jaquin Maria Carissa. Sorry for wrong pronunciation if I made wrong, but Laura, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear colleagues, the development strategy of Uzbekistan pays special attention to the transition to a green economy by the year of 2030. Nowadays, Uzbekistan demonstrates its commitment to reducing greenhouse gas emissions under the Paris Agreement. By 2026, it's planned to bring the share of renewable energy sources in the structure of generating power capacities to 25% in the country. Business structures and leading foreign companies demonstrating their interest in the development of solar and wind energy projects. Today, the representatives of the OSCE and other international organizations continue to provide expert and technical support in this direction. We highly appreciate the OSCE's contribution to the development of a green energy in Uzbekistan, for working together in updating relevant legislation and increase the potential of alternative energy in the country. Dear colleagues, today we are convinced that it's necessary to use effectively the mechanisms of parliamentary diplomacy for the development of green energy, and we call to join our efforts for strengthening interparliamentary cooperation and practical actions in bilateral and multilateral formats in OSCE region. Thank you very much for attention.
Thank you very much, Madam Feyzeva, for your speech. Now I'd like to recognize Mr. Garissa from Spain, to be followed by Mr. David Stockmuller of Austria. Mr. Garissa, please, you have the floor.
Gracias, presidente. Estimados colegas, los daños medioambientales y energéticos no quiero que desvíen la verdadera atención de los auténticos daños que está sufriendo el pueblo de Ucrania. Llevamos muchos minutos de silencio, llevamos muchas palabras de condena, y un año después de comenzar esta guerra ilegal hay un riesgo de que muchos ciudadanos se acostumbren a ver en televisión las terribles imágenes de los crímenes de guerra y empiecen a permanecer indiferentes. Se ha dicho que el pueblo ucraniano no necesita más palabras, sino más ayuda militar para defenderse, más armas. Pero desde la OSCE hoy solo podemos enviar palabras, pero me gustaría que no fueran unas palabras más. Hay diferentes tipos de palabras, igual que hay diferentes tipos de armas. Nuestras palabras de hoy deben ser claras y duras. Ucrania está siendo invadida de manera brutal sin haberlo provocado. Una invasión ilegal. Hace muchos años en España, en mi nación, sufríamos terribles atentados por una banda terrorista. Y un día el pueblo español, millones de ciudadanos, salieron a las calles y gritaron una palabra. Probablemente no tenga fácil traducción. Basta ya. Hoy, aquí, desde la OSCE, yo quiero repetir aquel grito y decirle al tirano Putin, basta ya de esta guerra ilegal. Para ya esta guerra, Putin.
Thank you, Mr. Garissa. Sorry. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. David Stockmuller from Austria, to be followed by Mr. João Azevedo e Castro of Portugal. So, David, you have the floor.
Thank you, dear Chair. Ich werde es auf Deutsch machen. Der Weg aus der fossilen Abhängigkeit von Russland ist auch gleichzeitig der Weg hin zu erneuerbarer Energie. Das waren die Worte der der Klimaministerin von Österreich, wie wir vor 2 Tagen mit dem Young Parliamentarian Network, das wir gegründet haben, hier in der OSZE vor Ort besucht haben. Und ich glaube, dieser Satz wiederhole ich ganz genau, weil es den Nexus zwischen der Sicherheitspolitik und der Energiepolitik anspricht, an dem sich große Teile Europas heute befinden. Und ich brauche das hier, glaube ich, hier nicht besonders großartig erwähnen. Österreich hat in den letzten Jahren und Jahrzehnten genug Fehler gemacht. Billiges russisches Gas trumpfte Rechtsstaatlichkeit und Demokratie. Auch als Putin 2014 die Krim besetzte und annektiert, haben wir nicht gehandelt. Viele haben nicht gehandelt. Zu stark war der Sog der billigen Rohstoffe, zu vertieft die russische Kontrolle der europäischen Energiemärkte. Das hat mit Russlands feigen Angriffskrieg auf die Ukraine jetzt, zumindest für Österreich und auch für viele europäische Kolleginnen und Kollegen, ein Ende. Putins völkerrechtswidrige Aggression in der Ukraine hat uns die Scheuklappen abgenommen. Die Invasion der Ukraine ist auf das Schärfste zu verurteilen. Und das steht außer Frage. Russland tritt das Völkerrecht und die Grundsätze der Menschlichkeit seit Jahren mit Füßen zum Leid von Millionen ukrainischen Männern, Frauen und Kindern. Wiederholen wir nicht unsere Fehler, sondern lernen wir daraus. Lernen wir raus. Lösen wir uns nicht nur aus der Abhängigkeit russischer Fossilbrennstoffe, sondern aus der Abhängigkeit fossiler Brennstoffe an sich. Putin hat uns endgültig gezeigt, wie wichtig Resilienz und Energieunabhängigkeit für die Sicherheit in Europa ist. Das heißt auch, dass den russischen Fehler nicht mit neuen fossilen Lenzern oder Diktatoren zu begehen. Lassen wir uns nicht in die Arme anderer Öl- und Gasgiganten und damit zurück in die Abhängigkeit, in die Korruption und in die Technologien von gestern treiben, sondern setzen wir der Abhängigkeit endlich ein Ende. Setzen wir auf Technologien von morgen, Windkraft, Wasserkraft, Photovoltaik, Geothermie. Das ist die Zukunft der Versorgungssicherheit der nächsten Generation. Schaffen wir neue Strukturen, neue Wege der Kooperation, die nicht auf Abhängigkeit basieren. Der Weg aus der fossilen Abhängigkeit von Russland ist auch der Weg zur erneuerbaren Energie. Und ich glaube, es ist Ironie der Geschichte, dass der womöglich bedeutendsten Schritt im Kampf gegen Russland und im Kampf gegen den Klimawandel derselbe sein könnten. Denn Sicherheit ist heute multidimensional denn je. Und wir brauchen einen Kraftakt, dass wir diese Resilienz für Europa und für die gesamte Welt auch schaffen. Also setzen wir auf erneuerbare Energien und setzen wir die richtigen Schritte. Vielen Dank, Herr Chef.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stogmuller, for your speech and intervention. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Joia Azevedo Castro of Portugal, to be followed by Mr. Tahir Mikshili of Azerbaijan. So, Mr. Castro, you have the floor.
So we move to the next.
Mr. Castro is not here, he is absent. So then I would like to give the floor to Mr. Tahir Mikshili from Azerbaijan, to be followed by Mr. Vladimir Tanankov of Russia. Mr. Mikshili, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Since the war in Ukraine started last February, Azerbaijan's role in enhancing of the energy security as a reliable partner of the European Union has been dramatically increased. Azerbaijan, as you know, increased gas export to the European Union by 40% in 2020, and total export reached to 11 billion cubic meters. As a new memorandum of understanding on a strategic partnership in the field of energy was signed between Azerbaijan and the European Union, and EU last year, which will make Azerbaijan gas export to European Union, will double it by 2026. Azerbaijan has a great potential in renewable energy production. Current solar and wind energy potential of Azerbaijan in Caspian Sea will lead to cleaner energy power production in the future. To ensure the clean energy efficiency, it's necessary to establish an energy transportation network within neighboring country. This type of energy is very promising for both Azerbaijan and its neighbors. In the next 20 years, we will witness a rapid transition to clean energy. Main challenges will be energy infrastructure and energy efficiency. We have to reach high level of cooperation and solidarity to meet all these challenges. Dear colleagues, I want to make it clear just some of the claims that have been sounded here by Armenian delegation and of our colleagues from the United Kingdom, so Ms. Rapahuk, by Ms. Rapahuk. The first we want to say is that the Laçın Road is not closed. Azerbaijan has not put any restriction on the traffic along the Laçın Road. Ms. Rapahuk says that she has some information by Armenian diaspora, but I want to just advise her that just to Google it, at the internet you can see that there is the huge number of the videos that you can see there is no any restriction there. If the one road is crossing every day 60 vehicles, how can you call this road closed? So let's to be more honestly here. The second question is regarding the Armenians question, like the blockade of the economic relation and some addresses. I just want to say that during the last 2 years after the ending the war, Azerbaijan realized all the infrastructures that closing to the Armenian borders. All the road, 80% of the roads, 60% of the railroads actually has been completed by Azerbaijan to be more wide middle corridor between east and west.
Thank you.
But can you ask just one thing? Can you ask just to Armenia that they didn't put even the plan in economic relations? That's why we don't believe Armenia. But I called Armenian friends also to be honest in the future also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mikshili. Now I'd like to announce our last speaker in my list, who is Mr. Vladislav Danankov. Mr. Danankov, are you here? No, I don't see him. So by that, I'd like to close the list of speakers, and before going on the other item, on the next item, I'd like once again thank our panelists and the distinguished guest speakers. And also I'd like to ask whether they want to take a floor to make some comments on what has been said by our distinguished colleagues. If it is the case, I'd like to ask maybe to use 1 or maximum 2 minutes to make some clarification or comment. Maybe we start from Mr. Huang, from you, if you wish. Then we will, I don't know, Mr. Professor Konin is connected or not. If he is connected,
Yes.
Next speaker will be Professor Konin. And lastly, I will ask Mr. Aldag also to take this opportunity to comment if he really wishes to make some clarification. Thank you. So, Mr. Huang, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, to give me this chance to give some observation on what has been delivered by the parties of the OSCE. I heard a lot of discussion talking about this just transition to the decarbonized economy, and we recognize the important role by the renewable. But I think so in order to support this high penetration of renewable in the energy mix with the aim of the net zero target, we also need some other technology, low carbon technology, to support them. So, which what I already mentioned slightly in my presentation, talking about the nuclear's role, which can really help to complement the renewable in this global effort. So I heard some countries talk about this one, and in the previous session, and we know also the quite number of the OSCE members parties actually clearly indicate the role in their clean energy transition. So as an international organization, we are just ready to support our member states to achieve their targets, respecting their sovereign right of the decision about the energy policy and climate policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huang, for your comment. Now I would like to ask Professor Konin if he's connected.
Yes, good. Many of you have aspirations to have large amounts of wind and solar in your grid. And in fact, wind and solar are the cheapest ways today to generate electricity. But a grid is much more than just generation. It's about reliability. And so if you're going to have large amounts of wind and solar, you have to have backup systems. Nuclear was just referred to, but it could be other things. And those backup systems are actually more expensive than the wind and solar if you want to have modern reliability greater than 99.9%. And so the most expensive part of the grid is the reliability. I would urge each of you to listen to the people in your country who construct and operate the electrical grid. If you give them permission, they will tell you the technical truths and will work with you to reduce emissions from the power sector as much as possible. Unfortunately, at least in the US, and I suspect in many of the other countries around the table, those experts do not have much of a voice because they are deemed to be troglodytes, backward, vested interests, and so on. But there are technical and physical and economic realities to electricity that you need to respect as you think about decarbonizing.
Thank you very much, dear Professor, indeed, for your comment and for being available to be with us. And really, we appreciate your thoughts and your recommendation. I do hope that our distinguished members will take into consideration some of your good advice, and I do hope that it is very much useful. So,
you're welcome.
like to ask my friend John, Mr. Aldak. Now it is your turn. Please take this opportunity and make some comment if you wish, please.
Well, as a politician, I have to take the opportunity to take the microphone and when invited. I would like to say that what's before us today, the discussions we've had, I think it's very much forefront on all of our minds is Russia's war on Ukraine. And I think that we all have to hope that today is the last day that the occupation, that the war, the attack, the assault on a sovereign country, that it's the last day. And if it's not today, then let's hope it's tomorrow. And if not tomorrow, then the next day. But we have to continue to stand united to see the end of this war on Ukraine. And at that point, we can turn our minds to other large issues facing our society, our planet. And that is things like climate change. And I've heard today a lot of interest of the need to advance the work that we're doing to move to decarbonize our economies. I think that as governments, as parliamentarians, it would be great if we can continue to share successes and failures so that we can get this right and we can get it right faster. We can have affordable energy, we can have reliable energy for our citizens while affecting positive change to our planet's climate. And so I hold great hope that as we can move hopefully sooner than later from our focus on this war to other issues that are facing our planet, such as climate change, we will be able to get there fast and together. I think that I will be putting forward another paper for the Vancouver session this summer, and that can mean working together and getting signatures and support. And I look forward to others working in this space to sharing ideas as we work towards the meetings in Vancouver. I look forward to hearing our rapporteur's report and again the ideas on where we need to go. So I think that, let's not forget the important work that's ahead of us while we have this other very important and real crises in front of us. But thank you so much for the thoughtful comments today. And it does give me hope despite the challenges that we are facing. So thank you.
Thank you very much, dear John. Thank you indeed for your contribution. It is pretty much appreciated. Again, we are looking forward to being together in Vancouver to have I would say, next very productive session of our assembly. So, dear colleagues, once again, I'm very grateful to all our honorable guests, as well as our distinguished members of the committee for their valuable contribution. I appreciate that many of us took the chance and made the intervention, and I do believe that our rapporteur, Madam Kugler, also took a due note of all this intervention, the proposals, and particularly I do believe that the intervention of our guest speakers were very much interesting. I am also happy that we are within the time frame of our schedule. It means that our committee is quite accurate, and that this is pretty much appreciated. I am very grateful to all of you who were in close, stick to the timeline and our program. Now we have only one last the item, which is about any other businesses. It is number 5, item number 5. Now, as far as I understood, I have only one person, our colleague from Kyrgyzstan, Mr. Tolonov. Yes, he has requested a floor for any businesses. If he is here, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Tolonov. Okay, if it is not the case, so dear colleagues, we came to the end. Before concluding, I would like to thank again all our speakers for their excellent contributions and all participants for their constructive engagement. Finally, I would like to thank the International Secretariat. I would like to name my good friend Marco, Bonabella, Daria, Beatrice, Irina, of course, our colleague Gudrun, and our good advisor for procedure issue, and all who really and kindly assisted us as a leader of the second committee, and also made very great intervention and also contribution in successful end of our committee. Of course, finally, I'd like to, on behalf of all of you, to thank our interpreters for their professional efforts and our, applause for all of our interpreters. So, dear colleagues, now by that, I declare the meeting closed. Looking forward to seeing you in Vancouver. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.